There is a story that repeats in every culture on this planet, and almost nobody notices why it repeats. A king walks through his own city dressed in rags. Nobody recognizes him. He asks for bread at a door he owns. He sleeps on stone that belongs to him. The guards push him away from a gate that answers to his name. And the whole time, not one person in that city is lying. They are all telling the truth about what they see. The man in front of them is a beggar. He looks like a beggar, he smells like a beggar, he speaks like a beggar. The city is not wrong. The city is simply reporting the costume. Neville Goddard spent his entire life pointing at one thing, and this is it. You are not poor. You are being poor. And your nervous system has been doing it for so long that the costume no longer feels like clothing. It feels like skin. Say those two sentences again slowly, because everything in this video depends on the gap between them. You are not poor. You are being poor. One of those is a number in an account, and numbers change constantly, quietly, without asking permission. The other is a performance, and a performance requires an actor who shows up every single day, on time, and does the work. That is the part nobody tells you. Being poor is not a condition. It is an occupation. It is a full-time job with no days off. It requires effort. It requires rehearsal. It requires you to wake up every single morning and put the costume back on before you have even checked your phone. And you do, every morning. Before your feet touch the floor, something in you runs an inventory. What is missing? What is late? What is due? What you cannot afford this week? You do not choose to run that inventory. It runs itself the way your heart runs itself. That is not spirituality. That is neurology. Your brain has built a permanent circuit whose only job is to confirm that you are the man in rags, and it fires that circuit before you are even fully awake. This is why affirmations fail for most people. You spend 4 minutes telling yourself you are wealthy, and then you spend the remaining 15 hours and 56 minutes wearing the costume with total conviction. 4 minutes of speech against 16 hours of embodiment. The nervous system does not count words. It counts hours. It counts feeling. It counts the state you occupied when nobody was watching and nobody was recording, and you were not performing spirituality for anyone. So the question is not, how do I get money? The question is, why does the costume feel truer than the crown? Let me answer that with something uncomfortable. The costume feels true because it works. Not because it makes you rich, but because it keeps you safe. Every time you assume lack, you are protected from a very specific kind of pain. And that pain is the pain of expecting and not receiving. If you never expect, you can never be humiliated by the gap between what you assumed and what showed up. Lack is a shield. Poverty of assumption is armor. And your nervous system will defend armor with everything it has, because armor kept your ancestors alive. Understand what you are actually fighting. You are not fighting laziness. You are not fighting a lack of information. You have consumed more manifestation content in the last 2 years than most people consume in a lifetime, and your account still reflects the rags. You are fighting a protection mechanism that interprets wealth as exposure. Your brain has quietly decided that the man in the rags survives and the man on the throne is a target, and so it dresses you down, every day, automatically, in love, in its own broken way. Neville said assumption hardens into fact. But nobody tells you the second half of that sentence. Any assumption hardens into fact. The assumption of lack hardens just as reliably as the assumption of wealth. The law does not evaluate your preferences. It does not audit your vision board. It takes whatever state you inhabit most consistently, and it builds a world around it, brick by brick, with terrifying loyalty. Your current life is not a punishment. Your current life is a receipt. It is proof that the law is working perfectly on the wrong instruction. Now here is where most people go wrong, and I want you to catch yourself doing it. When you hear this, your instinct is to try harder to feel rich. You will close your eyes tonight and you will strain. You will attempt to manufacture the feeling of wealth the way a man attempts to lift something heavy. Face tightening, jaw clenched, trying to force a state. That effort is the costume. That is the beggar reaching for the crown. The reaching itself announces that you do not have it. Watch how someone who actually owns something behaves. A man who owns a house does not spend the evening visualizing his house. He does not affirm his address. He does not lie in bed generating the feeling of home ownership. He simply lives inside a fact so ordinary that it never occurs to him to think about it. The fact is boring. The fact is background. That is what possession feels like from the inside. Not excitement, not gratitude ceremonies. Boredom, wealth, in the mind of someone who has it, is boring. And your mind cannot stand that. Your mind wants money to feel electric, because electric is what you feel when something is far away and might arrive. Distance creates charge. Possession removes it. So the very excitement you have been taught to cultivate in your practice is the exact signal that tells your nervous system the money is not yours yet. Sit with how backwards this is. You were told to raise your vibration. You were told to get excited about your desire. You were told to feel it with intensity. And every one of those instructions trains you to occupy the emotional state of a man who is waiting. Waiting is the beggar's posture. He waits at the gate. He waits for the door to open. He waits for someone to hand him something. Excitement is the emotional signature of waiting. The king does not wait at his own gate. He walks through it, not with excitement, with indifference. I want to give you a picture that will make this permanent in your mind. Imagine two men standing in front of a bank. The first man stares at the building. He studies the doors. He wonders what it would feel like to have real money in there. He imagines the number. He gets a small rush from the imagining. The second man walks past the same building without looking at it, because he already has an account inside, and buildings you own do not command your attention. The first man is performing spirituality. The second man is simply living from a state. You have been trained by an entire industry to be the first man. You have been trained to look at the building. You have been trained to feel something while you look. And you have been told that the feeling is progress. It is not progress, it is confirmation of distance. You do not stare at what you possess. You stare at what you are separated from. Now let me speak about the part almost nobody addresses. Why the costume goes back on after a good day. You have had those days. A payment arrives unexpectedly. A client says yes. A number appears in your account that is bigger than you planned for. And for about 6 hours you are somebody else. Your shoulders drop, you speak differently. You order without checking the price twice. You feel, briefly, like the man who was never in rags. And then, without any external event, it comes back. By evening you are calculating again. By the next morning the inventory is running. Nothing happened, no bill arrived, no disaster. The money is still there. And yet the costume is back on. That is the moment that reveals everything, because it proves the costume was never caused by the bank balance. The balance changed and the state did not, which means the state was never a response to your circumstances. It was a habit that your circumstances happened to match. This is the most important sentence in this entire video, so hear it clean. Your financial state is not the cause of your inner state. Your inner state is a rehearsal that has been running so long, it has recruited your circumstances as props. The man in the story does not stay a beggar because the city refuses to crown him. He stays a beggar because he keeps returning to the rags at night when nobody is watching, because the rags are what his body understands as rest. Ask yourself what you return to when the day ends and there is no one to impress. That returning place is your actual assumption. Everything else is performance. Neville gave a very specific instruction about this, and it is far more surgical than the versions being sold to you today. He said to catch the mood of the wish fulfilled and then live from it, not toward it. Live from it, not visit it, not practice it for 20 minutes. Live from it, the way a man lives from his own name, without effort, without announcement, without needing anyone to confirm it. Living from it means the state becomes the floor you stand on, not the ceiling you reach for. And a floor is not exciting. A floor is unremarkable. A floor is the thing you forget about entirely because it never occurs to you that it might not be there. So how does a man take off a costume that has fused to his skin? Not by pulling. Pulling is effort, and effort is beggar behavior. He takes it off by refusing to rehearse it. And rehearsal, in practical terms, is much smaller and much more constant than you think. It is not your ritual. It is your reflexes. It is the small breath you take before you look at your bank app. That breath is a rehearsal. It tells your nervous system that this number is a verdict on your worth, that it may hurt you, that you must brace. Rich people do not brace before looking at numbers. They glance at numbers the way you glance at the weather. The number is information. It is not a judgment. It is the way you check a price twice before deciding, not the deciding, the checking twice. The second check is theater performed for an internal audience that needs proof you are being responsible. That second look is a costume adjustment. It is the way you say "we will see" when someone talks about your future. It is the way you soften every claim about what is coming in case it does not come, so you will not look foolish. That softening is the rags being pulled tighter. It is the way you feel a small pinch of something when a friend describes their new car. Not envy exactly. Something quieter. A tightening. That tightening is your nervous system confirming a hierarchy in which you are below. None of these are dramatic. That is precisely why they work. The costume is not maintained by big failures. It is maintained by 1,000 micro-confirmations a day, each one so small that you would never think to challenge it. And each one is a vote. Each one tells the law who you are being. You cannot out-affirm 1,000 votes with one ritual. You have to stop casting them. And here is the part that will sting because it explains why other people appear to have it easier while doing far less. They were never fitted for the costume in the first place. A child raised around money is not taught abundance. Nobody sits that child down and explains the law. Something quieter happens. That child watches an adult look at a price and remain completely unmoved. That child watches money leave the house and nobody's face changes. That child hears a large number spoken in a normal tone of voice at dinner between two other sentences, as if it were the price of bread. And in that moment, a calibration happens in the child's nervous system that no seminar can undo later. Large numbers get filed as normal, not as exciting, not as dangerous. Normal. Meanwhile, in another house, a child watches a parent's shoulders rise when an envelope arrives. That child hears whispering in the kitchen about a bill. That child sees a face change color at a number, and that child learns something far more powerful than any belief. That child learns that money is an emotional event. That money is charged. That money is a thing which can hurt the people you love. Both children grow up and go looking for the same thing, but one of them is reaching for a tool, and the other one is reaching for a bomb. Same object, completely different nervous system response, and the one holding the bomb will always find a reason to put it back down, no matter how badly he says he wants it. That is not a mindset issue. That is training that happened before you could read. So when you sit down tonight and try to feel wealthy, understand what you are actually up against. You are not up against doubt. You are up against 15 or 20 years of calibration that taught your body that money is a source of tension, and that the safest emotional posture around money is bracing. And a body braced is a body in rags. It does not matter what words you are saying while you brace. Now understand what the 3D is doing while this runs. The 3D is not judging you. The 3D is not withholding. The 3D is a mirror with a delay, and mirrors do not negotiate. The city did not refuse to crown the king. The city simply reported with perfect accuracy what was standing in front of it. When you walk into a room braced, softened, apologetic about your own future, the world does not see a wealthy man having a hard week. It sees a man in rags and it responds to rags. Prices get quoted to you differently. Opportunities get described to you differently. People decide what you are for before you finish speaking, and they decide it from the state you are wearing, not the desire you are holding. You have been trying to change the report. That is what most manifestation practice actually is. Arguing with a mirror, standing in front of the glass, in rags, insisting that the reflection is wrong. The reflection is never wrong. The reflection is the most honest thing in your life. It is the only device that will tell you, without flattery, exactly which state you have been occupying while you were convinced you were doing the work. So stop trying to fix the reflection. Change what is standing in front of it. Before we go into the second half, where I show you exactly what the mind of the man who never wore the costume does differently, and why he seems to get things without any of the effort you put in, I want to say one thing quickly. If you want the deeper breakdown of this specific mechanism, the one I keep referring to as the state you return to when nobody is watching, I left something for you in the pinned comment. It goes further than a video can go, and it is the closest thing I have found to a practical manual for this. Take a look after you finish here. Now let us continue. Let us look closely at the man who never learned to wear the costume, because studying him is far more useful than studying technique. The first thing you notice about him is that he does not defend his position. When someone questions his plans, he does not build a case. He does not list evidence. He does not explain how it will work. He says something short and then changes the subject, and there is no tension in the change. He is not avoiding the challenge. He simply has nothing at stake in convincing anyone. because the matter was settled internally long before the conversation started. Now watch yourself. When someone questions your future, something in you rises to argue. You explain the plan. You mention the numbers. You describe the strategy. And you feel a small heat in your chest while you do it. That heat is the tell. Nobody defends what they already own. You do not walk into a courtroom to prove your own name. You defend what you are hoping is true. Every explanation you have ever given about your coming success was a confession that the matter was still open. The second thing you notice is that he does not celebrate small wins in the way you were taught to. Money arrives and his face does not change. Not because he is ungrateful, because it was expected. Expectation removes surprise, and surprise is what celebration is made of. When you get excited about a payment, you are announcing to your own nervous system that this event was outside the normal range. And your nervous system files it exactly that way. Unusual, rare, not to be counted on. Understand what that costs you. Every time you celebrate money as a rare event, you reinforce that money is a rare event. The elation feels like alignment. It is actually a correction back toward lack. The rich man's flatness around money is not coldness. It is the emotional signature of someone for whom this is Tuesday. The third thing you notice is that he does not track. He does not check the account 4 times a day. He is not monitoring for evidence. And this one is difficult for people to hear because checking feels responsible. It feels like awareness. But look at the impulse underneath the behavior. You are not checking to gather information. You are checking to see whether reality has agreed with you yet. You are looking for permission to relax. That is the beggar at the gate, knocking again to see if it opened this time. A man who owns the building does not test the door hourly. He assumes it opens, and because he assumes it, he behaves in a way that makes the door irrelevant. He does not organize his day around whether it opened. So here is the first practical instruction, and it is harder than any visualization exercise you have ever been given. Stop asking reality for updates. Not forever. Not as a rule you punish yourself with. But notice every single time, the moment before you reach for the app, that a question is being asked. Am I still poor? That is the question. It is always the question. And every time you ask it, you receive an answer built by yesterday's state. And that answer refreshes the costume for another day. The second instruction concerns the hour that matters most, and Neville was extremely specific about it. The state you occupy in the moments before sleep is not one state among many. It is the one that gets written. Think about what actually happens there. Your conscious mind loosens its grip. The critical faculty that spends all day arguing with you goes quiet. And whatever you are carrying at that moment goes directly into the machinery that builds your world, without resistance, without editing. That is not mysticism. That is simply the only window in 24 hours where your defenses are down. Now think about what you actually carry into that window. Most people carry the ledger. They lie down and the mind opens the accounts. What is due? What did not come? What they said? What it means? Tomorrow's arithmetic, and they fall asleep inside a full rehearsal of the man in rags every night for years, and then wonder why the world keeps casting them in that role. You have been writing the same instruction every night with total consistency. The law has been obeying with total precision. There is no failure anywhere in this system. There is only an author who does not read what he signs. So change what goes into the window. Not with strain, not with a long ceremony, with a scene so small and so ordinary that it could be true tonight, a short moment implying the thing is already done, a card that goes through without thought, a number seen without bracing, someone saying something to you that only gets said to a man who is no longer struggling, small, ordinary, repeated until it is dull. Dull is the target, not vivid, not powerful, dull. When the scene bores you, it has become a fact. The third instruction is about what happens in the days after, and this is where almost everyone loses the crown. There is a gap. There is always a gap. You occupy the new state, you sleep in it, you wake up in it, and the world shows you exactly what it showed you yesterday. The same balance, the same silence, the same nothing. And here is where the 3D performs its oldest trick. It presents you with a scene that is indistinguishable from failure, and it waits to see which man responds. The beggar responds by checking. He looks for evidence. He finds none. He concludes the process is not working. He then adjusts his method, tries a new technique, watches another video, and starts over. And in that entire sequence, He has told his nervous system a single message with tremendous force. It did not work. Which is another way of saying, I am still him. The king does not respond because nothing has happened that concerns him. The world reporting old conditions is not news. It is the delay he already accounted for. He is not waiting for the world to catch up because he is not standing at the gate looking at it. He is inside, doing something else entirely. That is the whole difference. Not belief, not intensity. Response to the gap. You will be tested in exactly this way. Probably within days of finishing this video, something will arrive that looks like proof that none of this applies to you. A number will be smaller than you hoped. Someone will say no. A plan will collapse quietly, and your entire nervous system will offer you the costume, folded, warm, familiar, and it will feel like the mature thing to put it back on. It will feel like realism. Realism is just the name we give to the state we are most rehearsed in. The fourth instruction is the one nobody wants, and it is where the real work is. Audit the reflexes, not the rituals. Do not add anything to your morning. Instead, for 1 week, catch the micro confirmations, the breath before the app, the second price check, the softening of a claim about your future, the tightening when someone else wins, the joke about being broke, which you tell to make the room comfortable and which costs you far more than you know because the body does not understand humor. It only registers the statement. You do not have to fix any of them. Catching is enough at first because a rehearsal that is being observed loses most of its power. The costume works because it operates below the level of attention. The moment you see the hand reaching for it, the automatic quality is gone and you are no longer being dressed. You are choosing, and the moment you are choosing, you are no longer the beggar. Beggars do not choose their clothing. Kings do. There is a fifth thing, and it concerns the people around you. When a man stops wearing the costume, the people in his life notice before his bank does, and they do not always congratulate him for it. Some of them get uncomfortable because your rags were part of an arrangement. Your struggle gave certain conversations their shape. Your complaining gave certain friendships their content. When you stop bracing, you stop being available for a particular kind of exchange, and people feel that immediately, long before they can explain it. This is where most people quietly return to the costume, and they never admit that this was the reason. It is easier to be poor with your people than wealthy alone. That trade is made in silence, in 1,000 small moments, usually while telling yourself you are being humble. Humility is not agreeing to stay in rags so nobody feels distant from you. That is not humility. That is camouflage, and the law reads camouflage exactly the way it reads sincerity, because the law does not read intention. It reads state. So decide now, before it happens, that you are not going to translate yourself downward for the comfort of a room. You do not have to announce anything. You do not have to argue with anyone or explain your new direction. You simply stop participating in the ritual of shared complaint. You go quiet where you used to join in. That silence will do more for your finances than a year of visualizing, because it removes the largest daily rehearsal most people have and never counted. There is a sixth thing, and it may be the most surgical instruction in this entire video. Revise the day before you sleep. Neville was relentless about this, and modern manifestation content has almost entirely abandoned it because it is unglamorous and it requires honesty. Here is what it means in practice. Before you go into that window where your defenses drop, you take the day that just happened and you replay the moments where you wore the costume, and you replay them as the man who does not own one. The conversation where you softened your claim. Replay it with the claim intact, the moment you checked the price twice. Replay it with one glance and a decision, the moment you tightened when someone else won. Replay it flat, uninterested, because a man with his own kingdom does not measure himself against a neighbor's roof. You are not lying to yourself. You are not pretending the day went differently for the sake of comfort. You are re-recording the take. The body does not distinguish sharply between a vivid replay and an original event. This is why an old memory can still tighten your chest 20 years later. The machinery responds to the scene, not to the calendar. And if a false memory can keep you in rags for 2 decades, a corrected one can begin dressing you differently in a week. Do it small. 3 moments. That is enough. And then go into sleep as the man who handled the day that way. And now the question you are actually holding, the one you have been holding since the beginning of this video. How long? I'm going to answer it honestly, because the honest answer is the one that protects you. There is no timeline, and every timeline you set is another gate you build in front of yourself. The moment you say 30 days, you have created 30 days of measuring, 30 days of checking, 30 days of asking reality for updates, and 30 days of a man standing at the gate wondering if it opened yet. A deadline is a beautifully disguised confession of doubt. Nobody sets a deadline on a thing they already have. What actually happens is stranger and much quieter than a timeline. One day, you notice that something you used to brace for no longer produces a bracing. A number comes into view and your body simply does not respond. No tightening, no breath, nothing. And it will barely register as an event, because non-events do not announce themselves. That flatness is the crown arriving, not the money. The money follows the state the way weather follows pressure, and it usually arrives through a door you were not watching, in a form you did not plan at a time you had stopped counting. That is why people say it happened when I let go. They did not let go of the desire. They let go of the checking. They stopped asking the mirror to be different, and the mirror, freed from the argument, finally reported something new. Now let me close this with something that will sound strange and will stay with you. You do not have to become wealthy. The becoming is the trap. Becoming implies a distance to travel, and any distance you accept becomes a distance the law is obligated to maintain. Every day you spend becoming is a day you have declared you are not yet. Neville never taught becoming. He taught assuming, and the difference between those two words is the difference between everything you have been doing and everything that actually works. To become is to walk toward. To assume is to occupy. You do not become your own name. You answer to it. The man in the story does not have to earn the throne. He never lost it. He walks his own streets in rags because he forgot what he was, and the city took its instructions from his appearance, and every day of that arrangement was lawful, accurate, and fair. The moment he remembers, nothing about the city changes. The gates are the same gates. The guards are the same guards. What changes is that he stops asking to be let in. That is the entire teaching. You are not being kept out. You are asking to be let into a place you own, and the asking is the only thing keeping the door in the way. So stop asking, stop preparing, stop qualifying yourself for a life you already hold the title to. The state you return to when nobody is watching is the state that builds your world. And tonight, for the first time, you know exactly what you are writing when you lie down. Write something else. And one last thing, because it is the peace people forget by tomorrow morning. You are going to wake up and the first 30 seconds are going to try to run the old inventory. It will happen before you decide anything. That is not failure. That is a circuit doing the only job it has ever been given. Do not fight it. Fighting it is effort, and effort is the beggar reaching again. Simply refuse to complete it. Let the first sentence arrive and do not supply the second one. The inventory needs your participation to finish. It needs you to add the arithmetic, the worry, the plan for how to cover it. Withhold that, and it collapses on its own within seconds because it has no power of its own. It is a habit, and habits starve quickly when they are not fed. Do that for a week, and something will shift that no ritual has ever produced for you. The mornings will get quiet, and a quiet morning is not a small thing. It is the first hour of the day spent outside the costume, which means the state you carry into every conversation, every decision, and every price you look at is no longer the state of a man bracing for bad news. That is how a kingdom is re-entered, not with a ceremony, with a morning where nothing tightens. If this landed on you, tell me one thing in the comments and be specific, because I read these and I use them to decide what I make next. Which reflex did you catch yourself doing while you were listening? The breath before the app, the second price check, the joke about being broke. Name it. Something happens when you write it down where other people can see it, and you will feel it the next time your hand reaches for the costume. I will be reading.